Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Vaishali Mathur. I'm a publisher at Penguin Random House India. And today we are going live with one of your most beloved authors, Durjoy Datta. You've loved his romances, you've loved the way he writes. And today he is with us to talk about his best selling books, his career on television, writing, and many other things. So, welcome to the live, Durjoy. It's so nice to see you after so many days.
Thank you so much. And I wish we were doing this like
Uh,
in
yeah,
person,
physically.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I think as they keep saying it, this is the new normal. So yeah, why not? Why not do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah,
So
I think we should have fun today, and then hope that, as you said, the next time this is going to be, you are going to be physically present to talk with your readers.
but the best thing is that
Okay,
you can like miss the session and you can just watch it
true.
afterwards. So yeah, there
Yeah,
are upsides to this as well.
yeah, yeah. So let's get started. Dojo, you want to hold up the book and kind of show it to everyone, and then
Yeah.
talk about a little bit about the book.
Okay, so last month my new book came out. It came out in January. It's called A Touch of Eternity. It's one of it is one of my best design covers. But what's inside is it is also I don't think very bad. I really enjoyed writing this book. So this book is about Dhruvan and Anvesha who always think of themselves as soulmates because they were born to neighbors on the same day, on the same date, at the same time, with the same birth weight. So it never occurs to them that they are nothing other than being soulmates. So that is where the story starts from, and the book is centered around the idea of reincarnation and soul. That we always say that love stories are forever, but what if it is really forever? And that is what the book is about. That it's about this couple who think of themselves as soulmates, but when they get a chance of living the next hundreds of lives together, will they do it? So that's what the book is about. And of course, at the center of it is the love story, and then there are other things that happen in the book. Yeah, it's not the book that I usually write. So there are a lot of dystopian or utopian elements to it. There is politics, religion, science, all mixed together in this book, which I think, which is a book that I would have liked to read. So I wrote this one, and I really like this book, and I hope anyone who's watching it gives it a try as well.
I know. I think it's a fabulous. I think I am also quite proud of this one, Durjoy. I'm proud of the way we were able to get the cover, some unusual colors and design there, and then of course unusual bit of writing from you. So it kind of the inside kind of complements the outside, and that's the fabulous cover they're showing on the screen. Yeah, I think that you have put your heart and soul into this book, but as you said, there are dystopian and utopian elements both to the text. So how did you come up with this theme? Because it's just so gripping. When I was editing it, I was struggling between editing and actually reading the book, and then we were quite short of time, and then I couldn't read it fully, and then I was like, okay, I have to get into the edits even before I finish reading it. So, how did you think of this amazing story? I love the contemporary religion, politics elements that you put into it. So, it's not just simply a love story, it's also bogged down by a lot of things or tethered to a lot of things in the
Mhm.
contemporary sort of situation.
I think what I wanted to do with this book is tell a simple love story. That is where it started from. Because for the last few books, I have not been writing like conventional love stories. Like there is a love story, but there is so much happening that it takes away a lot of attention from the love story. So I wanted to go back and like write a love story that write like two a story about two people who really grow up together, and their love story also grows with them. So that is where the idea came from. So that's why Dhruvan and Anvesha were born on the same day, two neighbors, and That was the start of my simple love story. But I think along the way, as I started writing it, I got bored of the love aspect. And I was like, there has to be something more,
That is
you know?
potentially dangerous, right? For you to say, I got
Yeah,
bored of the love.
yeah, and this has happened to me over the years that now when I read love stories written by other people, I really like reading them. But when I try to write a love story of my own, I get bored really easily. So when I was writing this one, this is what happened. So I wrote it and I was like, no, this is not interesting enough. Something more has to happen. And then I thought that, okay, so if this is supposed to be like an epic love story, what does an epic love story entail? And I was like, an epic love story entails being soulmates and being together till the end of time. And that's when I thought, what is the end of time? Is the end of time in this life or maybe the next life? And that is when I thought that, I can of course, the first time this idea came to me that let's write about reincarnation, I was like bogged down by the dozens of bad Hindi movies on Punarjanam, and I was like, no, I should not go in that direction. But once I crossed that hurdle of writing about something that does not exist, I was like, okay, let me just try to fool myself that reincarnation exists or the soul exists. And that is where, the story started to, take shape. And of course, it went through various iterations. So in one version, Dhruva and Anvesha were always in love and they could remember their past lives and their past love stories. But then as I was writing it, I was like, I'm not a great historical writer, so I can't like write about past times very convincingly. So let me just stick to the science bit of it and let me just like try to convince myself first that a soul exists, because that is the crux of the entire thing. Like if a soul exists, then of course reincarnation can exist. So yeah, that is where it came from. So that is where the book started from. I wanted to write a simple love story, but then I got bored of it, and yeah.
Okay, don't keep saying bored of it because you got bored of it, but I didn't, so it's not boring at all. It's quite an engaging read.
Yeah, no,
And
I was bored of the earlier version when I was just writing a
okay,
simple story
okay,
without anything. So just
yeah.
like nothing happens, that they're just growing up and falling in love.
But did
So
it feel like pandemic writing kind of like, didn't you write during the pandemic or beginning of the pandemic? When was
So yeah, half of it was during the pandemic,
the,
and that's why
yeah,
I took a lot of time. So there were multiple iterations of the book, and yeah, I just wrote the most convincing version of it. There were other
yeah,
versions that, to my head, were also great stories, but then I could not convince myself to believe in that story, and that's why I stuck with this. Because whenever I'm so the best kind of stories that I like to read is something that makes me stop and Google, okay, does this exist? So I wanted to bring that element in where anyone who's reading the book really stops and Googles that whether this thing exists. So I
yeah,
really wanted to have that feeling going in the book, okay, that every page there should be something which is making people stop and then say, okay, does this exist?
yeah, yeah.
So, so yeah, and during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to sort of keep, going back to the chapters and redoing it. So yeah, half the book was written during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the reading and the writing is something that all of us have been doing a lot during the pandemic. And I think that one of the things we noticed was that a platform like Penguin, we were able to, cater to people who were reading ebooks. And so we saw a huge surge in numbers in terms of ebooks. We did see a surge in terms of the audiobook as well. So I just had the feeling that there were a lot of people reading and trying to catch up on their TBR to be read list. And then it was really wonderful how people were engaged more with the authors. And I feel that even though we're sitting far away from each other and it's not like a physical launch, I still feel that people are taking time out, and even if they are not here today, they can always catch up with the recording, which I think is one of the good things about going online, that the outreach is far more at any given point of time, right?
Yeah. So, like, what kind of books did you see people picking up during this pandemic? Was it like,
A
because
lot of mind, body, spirit. A lot of mind, body, spirit. Um,
a lot of mine. Oh, okay, okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I also did a lot of that. So,
yeah,
I mean, I read an article where people were saying that so someone, so a lot of publishers were sort of interviewed, and they said that a lot of people are reading paranormal stuff or about vampires, etc., because they want to disconnect from reality. And I was like,
yeah,
okay. But then what I saw myself gravitate into was self-help books. So I have always looked down upon self-help books. Like like I don't want to read this, and reading this won't really change my life. And then I once I read one, and then I read another one, and I was like, okay, so this is the point of self-help books, is that you have to continuously do it. You have to
yeah,
continuously read a book and then another book. And then I started to see it like going to the gym, how you build your
yeah,
body over 10 years.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
how, self-help books become important, is that, or effective, is when you keep reading them, and you
true.
keep reminding yourself of the basic tenets of how to be mentally strong, or
Yeah,
be still,
yeah.
etc.
It's actually quite simple what they say, but it's so difficult to do given the kind of access we have to technology. And you getting up in the morning and you're looking at your phones, and then the self-help guru will say, "Don't look at your phone for 2 hours." But then you can look at the. You feel like you are getting nervous about it. You're sitting nervously for 2 hours, just holding on to yourself, and then unless you remind yourself every day that what you're doing is good for yourself, um, you are not able to do it. So you're absolutely right that need to keep reading it to
Yeah,
reaffirm the whole thing to yourself.
I think during the
Yeah,
pandemic, I became like one of those characters from Hollywood movies, like they're caricature characters who sleep with positive affirmations, from that tape recorder, etc., or the CD player. And I found myself doing that. I mean, every morning, what I would do is that either I would read a few pages of a self-help book, or I would just listen to an audiobook,
yeah,
just to remind myself, okay, this is what I have to do, because it's such an easy rabbit hole to get into. Just pick up your
yeah,
phone, it's like a digital pacifier for adults. You just scroll through, and you just shut out everything else. So yeah, and that's why, very interestingly, I started writing a nonfiction on these things, because
yeah,
what I
yeah,
realized is, so they all these self-help books, they try to make you feel more confident about yourself, and they try to make you believe in yourself. And I was like, yeah, I've been a motivated adult for the last 13, 14 years. If I've written like 18, 19 books, that is a big deal. So I should tell people how I did it.
yeah,
So yeah, so that is what my pandemic looked like: a touch of eternity and a lot of self-help books.
yeah. So tell me then, what is it that a day in the life of a self-motivated author looks like?
It's filled with a lot of self-doubt, self-hate, and then a lot of writing. So I try to, so I'm an early riser, so I get up early, and before everyone else wakes up in the house and sort of starts to create that chaos, I try to do one of two things: either I try to finish like 600, 700 words, or I try to play cricket or go to the gym or read a book, so that before anyone wakes up and starts to disturb me, I have already achieved something. So that is what I start my day off with. So I want to start strong and say that, okay, I've already written half my word count of the day. So, or done something that I was supposed to do during the day anyway. So that is what I start my day with. And once, my daughter sort of wakes up, then it's a madhouse. Then you just keep running around after her, and then you just wait. Then I just wait for her to sleep, which is like at 1. And once she sleeps at 1, then I come back to my laptop and I start working. So earlier, so I want to tell you that this room is a new addition. So before the
Okay.
pandemic, yeah. So earlier, my workstation used to be in my bedroom, and what happened is that during the pandemic, my wife stopped working, so she was always there, and my child was always there, and I said, "This is." So earlier, we all thought that it's going to end.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
telling me that an astrologer told you that it's going to be gone by July. So,
Yeah.
and everyone said that,
Yeah.
once the summers come in, the pandemic is going to be over. So I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's hold off. This much disturbance I can take. But once my rental agreement sort of got over, I was like, I need a room to myself to just write. And that's
Yeah.
when in January we shifted, where I got an extra room. So now this is the new room, which has nothing. It has just like a table, a plant, my cricket bat, and my laptop, and that's it. So now I think now is the time that I get a lot of time to write. So I can lock myself, and whenever my daughter is asleep or outside playing, I can sit down and write. So yeah, I mean, there's not much happening during the day, except, so there are two major things. One is writing, one is taking care of the baby. So that is what my entire day is, and of course reading. So these are, but reading I sort of consider as a part of the writing process. So a lot
Yeah.
of times I'm caught in this room reading a book or just watching something on Netflix, and my family asks me that "What are you watching?" and I have to make them understand that this is a part of my work. I have to
Yeah.
consume stuff to know how to write stuff. So yeah,
We all have that excuse, don't we?
yeah. I mean, and once I started reading a lot of books written by writers, is when I found out that a lot of writers have this process. Their run up is so long that they have to watch something, then read something, and then eventually write. So now I start taking screenshots of those books and keep sending it to my family. That when you catch me watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it is a part of the process.
I completely agree with you. By the way, the whole section where I'm sitting, this was also created during pandemic. Have been meaning to buy that bookshelf for such a long time. And in my office, I had, if you remember, I had this huge group. I had a huge pack of Penguin Classics behind
Yeah,
me, if
yeah,
you
yeah.
remember. So I
Yeah.
always used to think when I take them back home, I'm going to have a bookshelf specially for them. And so I have that with me. But I never imagined it'll be under these circumstances. And my husband's
Yeah.
desk is right behind me. And sometimes when we have a live, one of us has to just get up and move away. But but that's how it is that we are all at home. And reading a lot, I suppose. So, what I want to, I think that all of us will be curious about what is this kind of stuff that you are reading now.
So generally what happens is, my reading now is predominantly guided by what I'm trying to write. So when I was writing A Touch of Eternity, I was trying. So what happens when I'm writing is that I come across an idea, and then I'm 100% sure that other writers would have written about this. There is absolutely no way that you can come up with an idea which no one has written about. So when I came about, reincarnation, the existence of a soul, etc., etc., I started searching about a lot of about writers who have done this before. and then I bought all of those books and I started reading them. That's I think that's an exercise that a lot of writers should, I mean, young writers should do, because
Yeah,
then
it's
you,
important to read, right? I've met so many people who don't read enough, but they are ready to write. And it's
yeah,
very difficult to explain to them why something they've written is not working.
yeah, I mean, and there is something to learn from every book. See, why I read those books is not to flick off ideas from them. It is just to see, okay, I have a central idea. Let me see how they have tackled that. So, say you read a book, say Twilight, a book that is like quite hated by a lot of writers. But when I read it, I see that how they have constructed the male protagonist of the book as someone who's irresistible. I see how they have used the word gorgeous for him so many times, which 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 I mean, other books would have said handsome. You say gorgeous because it's a very feminine word to use for that male character, and it differentiates, tall dark handsome, tall dark handsome, because he's not tall dark handsome, it's sparkly white. So what is he?
Yeah,
He's got.
yeah, he's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're, of course, when as a writer, when I read it, I feel it's stupid to use the word gorgeous so many times. But when you read it as a reader, you're like, it is constantly hitting your psyche. Okay, he's gorgeous. The writer is constantly reminding you that please remember that he's very good looking. So everything stupid that he does is forgotten. So I mean, from a writer's point of view, I think every book
Do you
that's
think that also, sorry to interrupt you, I want to ask, do you think his being gorgeous also makes him more vulnerable and hence very attractive to the female readers? Do you think
of
that's
course,
one tactic there?
I mean, now
Like,
I have lost the ability to read a book and just enjoy it. I'm just trying to see what are the tricks the writer is using. I mean, when 50 Shades of Grey, E.L. James wrote the same book, getting in BDSM, and said that, my inner goddess. It's not like she would have read a draft and not realized that I'm using inner goddess way too many times. She's just appealing to all the girls who are reading it that, okay, there is something inside of you that who has desires.
and
Just
it's so
accept.
resonated. Yeah, it so resonated with us. And when you say you've lost your ability to enjoy a book, believe me, it's exactly the same with me. Like I get so much into the technique of the book. What are the techniques in terms of writing, in terms of setting, in terms of characters that are there, that I myself find very difficult to move beyond certain pages. I can read very quickly, but sometimes I'm just so involved in each and every construct that it becomes difficult for me to actually sit back and relax and enjoy the
Yeah,
book,
but
right?
I think so when I read a book, this is what happens, that I know, okay, so this is what the writer is trying to do. But I think after a while, then I start enjoying the book. I mean, I
Yeah,
think the first
you have to
half.
get into it fully.
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
first, I mean, when I've starting to read a book, I'm like, okay, this trick, boy with a golden heart, girl with a vulnerable past. This is what she's doing. She's going to tell a big secret, and this is going to happen. But once I get into it, then I'm like, okay, now I'm just enjoying the story. So yeah. So coming back to the point that you have to read. I mean, I have always believed that best-selling books are, they are bestsellers because of a reason. You might not like the entirety of a book, but you have to read it just to know what worked. And how is this book affecting you? Like, I don't believe that you might hate books like Twilight or even my books, but just read them. There will be moments that you feel that, okay, I've started to feel about this character, and why am I, what did the writer write that has implanted in my psyche that, okay, now I think that this guy is great or this girl is great. So yeah, reading is quite important.
Yeah. So, before I ask about reading, I just wanted to point out that I've always felt that affinity with the characters that you create. So when I'm reading the book, I do actually personally feel the characters even when I'm editing, and how what is their trajectory in the story. So but I wanted to ask you that what comes first, the story or the characters? And then how do you create your characters? Is there a special way of you thinking? Like you said that the other books look like they are very, the characters are vulnerable, or they are, in a certain way to attract the readers. But do you have any such mechanism yourself?
So, before I came to television, I used to think that I create characters out of thin air and everything just happens. And when I came to television, I realized, so in television, they coach you on how to create characters. So whenever you are creating characters, you have to decide. There's called in Indian television, what they do is they make a character diamond. Like, what are the five characteristics that define your characters? Is it burden of the past, being curious, and anger management. So five major things that define your character. And then beyond that, there is something called as a fatal flaw, that I want to fall in love with this character, but there is a fatal flaw. What is that fatal flaw? And then there is something called as a wound. What is the wound that this character is carrying? So all these things, I was taught that this is how you make a character. But so I had all this information, and I used to think that earlier I used to just wing it, just make a character, add traits, and just see what is interesting. But when I look back, I realized that I was doing this thing right from my first book. So, in an attempt to make a character interesting, I was adding traits that stood out, and I was trying to make that character vulnerable. So, in my first book, Of Course I Love You, where I wrote about this character Deb, who used to get all the girls, and despite being average, I would have thought when I was writing that book that, but how will some guy who's average looking connect to this character? And then I put in, okay, so he was really bullied at school. He used to lock up in the bathroom and cry when other people were sort of harrowing him, etc., etc. So I was doing these things to make the reader sort of feel for that character. So uh, I used to do those things without the training, but I think a lot of writers, find that to make people like those characters, you have to do all these things. It's just that I realized that, okay, this is what I was doing way, way after I started writing. But yes, for me, characters always come first, because I first get interested in the characters and then their story. Except for maybe a book like If It's Not Forever, which is a more plot driven story, or The Girl of My Dream, which is a thriller, so you have to put plot first. But in most cases, I just start with a couple of interesting characters and see where the story goes. Yeah, because that is what interests me a lot. Like, if you ask me, watch a 3 hour long movie, I will think that it's too much. I do not have 3 hours in my life. But if you say watch this television series for 8 hours, I'll do it. So like This Is Us, I like This Is Us as a television show because there are so many characters and there are huge character journeys, and you can follow those characters' journeys throughout the show. So I think as a writer, I find characters more interesting than the plot itself. So yeah, for me, it's always characters first.
Yeah, and I must hand it out to you, Durjoy, because I know your first book and I know this latest book, and I feel that your characters, even though we can call all your books romances, there is a certain growth that is happening in terms of the storylines are getting more complex, the characters are getting more complex, the situations and everything is getting way more complex. And I also like the fact that you're able to get in the country's situation, or how we think and feel about certain things, the way the way we feel about religion, or because there is a Muslim character in this book. And the good thing is that he supports Dhruvan and Anvesha right till the end, and there's an undying love between all three of them. So, do you want to talk a little about that character? Because I found him very interesting, and I personally wanted to know a little bit more about him.
So I was talking to someone a few days ago on a live, and they pointed out that your earlier books, they sort of just gloss over the fact that anything else is happening in the world except the love story of these two people. And my only response to that is, when I was growing up, when I was like 21, 22, nothing else mattered, and like nothing else affected my life. Either we were shielded from all the politics that was happening around us, or we were so comfortable in our own privilege that it didn't matter to us at all, but now with social media, I believe that a lot of young people have a better understanding of the country's situation, and who's in power and what's happening, what are the policies that are going on, how are people behaving to all those changes. So but I still think I don't write because I think young people have gotten more politically active. I think I write like that because it affects me a lot. So a lot of when it comes to writing about Muslim characters, I remember when I was growing up, like I was like a quintessential middle class person in Delhi, and there was just one Muslim guy in my entire class, and that is when my dad told me that you will never find Muslim people in middle class settings. And that sort of stayed with me, that okay, why don't we have that. It's because they are the less privileged lot in our country. So I wanted to bring that character in because the Muslim guy in my school was one of the coolest guys in our school. So and had he not been there, I would have had God knows what perception about them, because then my perception would have been shaped by news articles. So I wanted to bring that character in just to show that, okay, these guys, when they exist, they're just like us, and there is nothing to, and I wanted
Yeah,
to
that
bring
we are
in,
all a human race, right?
yeah,
And
I
simply
mean,
because you
it's just,
follow another faith
yeah,
should not make us any different.
yeah, and since, and especially since I live in Dubai now, and my community's team group 11 is, they're half Pakistani Muslims and half Indian Muslims and half Indian Hindus. I mean, when we meet, I mean, it's amazing. And just to think that there is
Yeah,
some kind of underlying tension and hate, it's so unimaginable to us. Because I remember
yeah,
just days back, we were trying to make a jersey for our team, and that's the cap. You can't see it, but it's blue and green. So when we are selecting it, people were like, "Kya kare?" And then there was an option which was blue and green. We were like, "हाँ, ये तो बहुत ही secular type का uniform है. Let's select this." So yeah, so that Rashid in the book could have been from any religion, but I just wanted to put him in just to show that, okay, yeah, it's I mean, you put like the entire I mean, from a limited sort of knowledge and experience, the entire point of bringing diversity in entertainment or etc. is to just normalize everything, just
yeah.
yeah. So
No, it's
now,
important. Yeah, it's
because
important.
now I have so many Arab friends here, and when they come home, and when we start watching Netflix, half of the Hollywood movies have Arab guys as terrorists, and it is so awkward just to switch it on. Like
Oh,
we,
come on. Being an Indian is also very embarrassing. Huh? Those
we,
accents are
we
not
need
hard.
caricature.
Yeah,
being you're a caricature, you become Appu. You
yeah,
become like a funny supermarket guy.
yeah.
But like when you have a person from, so just a few days back there was a person from Egypt house, and we let's watch something, let's start, and then we said okay, let's watch Homeland. I was like, fuck, we can't watch Homeland.
Homeland you can't watch. Yeah, yeah.
There's
Homeland
a
is
lot of stuff
another.
you can't
Yeah,
watch.
yeah,
So yeah, I just want to like normalize the entire thing. But then when you're bringing a character, then you can't like just bring it just for the sake of it. It can't be Rashid because it's a Muslim name. You have to see what kind of life he lives, what is his relationship with his religion. You have to see
yeah,
what is say Dhruvan and Vaishya's relationship with their religion. Just to put
yeah.
it, just to juxtapose the two things. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's also like you have also kind of broken down the whole religious thing, but that will get very boring. Let's
Yeah.
just talk about reading because I've had a couple of lives in the past 2 3 months, and a lot of people have asked me what how they should inculcate the habit of reading into their children. And personally, my answer was that you can start the reading habit in your children if you are reading, because that's how children learn. But since you have a young kid at home and a
Yeah.
very active two kids that we see on Instagram, quite loved and you know second to Temur, I suppose. So, yeah, yeah. So what is it that you do to make them read? Because I know we send you often books off and on and packs and everything. So how are you actively trying to inculcate that habit in Raina and
Yeah, yes. See, of course, because firstly, I'm a writer, so I want them to grow up being readers. And secondly, I think it's better than looking at screens. And like Raina is 3, but she she doesn't read, but she finds the entire exercise of pulling a book out and opening it and flipping through pages as something to do, because what we did from the start is that we try to make sure that we are found reading something. So, even when she's playing, we just pick up her book and just started flipping through the pages. Or I pick up any book that I'm reading and I just, flick through the pages so that she thinks. So, this is what, a lot of parenting advice says that, they imitate your behavior. So if you are seen enjoying books, they will also think that reading books is something that is enjoyable, and that's how they pick up that. And of course, a lot of children books are actually very interesting, and they're not written for kids; they're written for adults, so that the adults like it, and then they pass it on to their kids. So they have a lot of sarcastic jokes and everything. So I like the idea. So I liked the idea of Raina having her own library, and that's why I bought so many books. And then I realized that a 1-year-old kid will not read it. So I just used to flip it, and she used to get interested. Okay, what is my father doing? Let me also do it. And now she's like, she has to end and start the day with a book, which I think is one of my biggest achievements as a parent. And I also think, see, uh, it will be very presumptuous of me to say that reading makes you into a better person, and reading is the best habit you can have, etc., etc. But what I'll say is it's still better than looking at a phone. So instead, if the parent is just found reading books and the child picks it from the parent, I think it's a great achievement. And so yeah, I think read and you know. So she turned 3 this July, so she's supposed to be enrolled in a school pretty soon, but we are waiting for a year because we don't want her to start a school online. We're like, let's just wait. And my Avantika keeps asking me, why are you, like, you have been such a studious guy, and why don't you want her in a school as soon as possible? And I'm always like, the school doesn't matter. The environment which you give the child at your own house is what matters. Like, I became a reader because my house environment was like that. And everyone used to suggest each other books. My sister was addicted to reading books. My father used to keep giving me books. My mom was into books. So we all were reading. So that's how I got into reading. Why I was so hung up about getting good marks in academics is because my house was attuned to that. You have to do well. So I'm like, if we can just teach her stuff at home, and if we are all found reading stuff or learning stuff, she'll also pick up. So a few days ago, a couple of months ago, I even subscribed to a newspaper. Of course, you can get all your news from your phone, but if a newspaper reaches your house, there is absolutely no way that you'll not open it and read from it. And so now we started with one, now we have two. And now, because the newspaper is there, everyone picks it and starts reading. So now she knows this is a newspaper, and there's news in it, and there are different pictures of people. And so it all has to start from you. And you can't say, okay, go read a book. It's not going to happen like that.
And you're absolutely right, because I know that when I was growing up, there was nothing called children's books. Okay, now children, of course, have this huge array of books, and I don't think our parents could, at least my parents couldn't afford to buy books separately for each of the children. So you ended up reading all the adult books. And there were things like Manohar Kahaniya magazine that nobody's supposed to read. And you read it in the afternoon when all your everybody in the house was sleeping. And I like my father was reading a lot of Vivekananda and a lot of philosophical books, and we used to discuss this over dinner. And my grandmother was reading her Hindi books and magazines, and then they had a subscription for women in home at home. So and then you were reading the Illustrated Weekly, and then I've read so indiscriminately that I've even read Barbara Cartlan's when I was very young, because my uncle used to fly around the world, and I have no memory of it. It did not spoil me or anything. So and I couldn't even understand anything. But I do remember reading almost one summer. I read so many books that when I went to college, I had read all the authors that the college had prescribed.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's just amazing what I mean. That's what reading has done to both of us, right? You and I are here because
I mean, now that you say it, I distinctly remember that
yeah,
ever since I was very very young, Sunday mornings used to be like I used to wake up early because I knew that okay, the Sunday Times and जो भी
yeah,
Hindustan Times, it used to come. It used to be like a thick newspaper, and
yeah,
they used to be like colored pages, and subtitles.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
Be so excited about that. And
yeah,
now, if you don't subscribe to a newspaper, the kids will be absolutely deprived of the fact that they could be excited about the printed word.
yeah.
It was such a
It
huge deal that okay, two thick newspapers are going to come. I'm going to open it, flip through it, etc. Not read anything of it, but see the pictures, see the cricket matches ka pictures, etc. So yeah,
yeah.
so
I
that's
think
that's one of the reasons why I subscribe to a newspaper, couple of
yeah,
newspapers.
I think that's absolutely good. We get 5 to 6 newspapers, and I'm always thinking we should get a few more, and then we try to control ourselves that itna thodi padhte hai, you know. So
Yeah.
and then you are like book padhu ki newspaper padhu ki manuscript hi pad lu. So so that dilemma is there always in the mind. But I think good that we talked about reading, because it is important, and I think the way it grounds you. And some of the things that I feel like, even if you're reading classic authors who have written some 100 years back, even then it's amazing how you are able to relate to them, and sometimes say things like, oh my god, my life is exactly like this, at
Yeah.
the not at the macro level, but at somewhere
Yeah.
micro level, all human beings feel the same way.
Yeah.
And it's good to have the children be able to concentrate and learn, because
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've also started to believe that reading books is like a little bit like therapy, because when you're reading books and you're seeing the behavior of the characters in the books, you start to believe, okay, I'm not the only person who's thinking like this, or I'm
true,
not the only one who has gone through all of this. You
true.
feel a little bit less alone. I did
Yeah,
not used to think when I like this when I was younger, because when you're younger you just gloss over everything, that okay, this doesn't matter, this doesn't matter. But as I'm getting older, I realize, okay, I need to know that this, the way that I'm thinking, there are other people who are thinking like this. So I think it sort of acts like a
yeah.
little bit like therapy. That, okay, you are not alone in the way that you're thinking.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And so, Durjoy, I think we've got just about 15 minutes left. So, do you want to leave the readers with one thought about A Touch of Eternity? And then we can move on to the questions.
Okay, so A Touch of Eternity is my next, is my new book. I hope you guys get it. But the reason why you should get this book is because it's. I know a lot of people have this firm belief that I write soppy college love stories, but this is something different. This is the story about Dhruvan and Vesha, who were born on the same day, same date, two neighbors, and think of themselves as soulmates. But this book asks the question that what if your love story really lasts forever? We were all sold the concept of forever when the average age used to be like say 30 years. So forever used to mean maybe 10 years or 12 years. So now, if you are asked to live with your soulmate for the rest of eternity, would you do that? So the story is about that. It asks those questions around, along with a lot of other questions, and it's a book that I'm really proud about, and I really hope you guys read it and like it.
Okay, great. So now we have a few comments, and there is a person who is talking about your book being an exquisite masterpiece on societal norms. Do you have anything to say about that? Do you think that that's the right comment to have made?
I don't know whether it's right or not, but I'll accept it.
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
accept that comment. But yeah, I mean, see, I try to do my best, and when I'm writing it, I'm absolutely 100% sure that this is the best book ever written. It's only that once the book is done and it's edited and comes out, I start to read it and I'm like, there are a lot of flaws in the book. But when I'm writing it, I do feel that it's the best book ever written by me or by anyone else. So thank you for validating that. But I really like this book. I mean, I I really really like this book. I mean, there is no other way to put it, because you know I I I, I started off thinking that I'll write about something that does not exist, and I really doubted my ability to make people believe that something like this can exist. But when I read it, I was like, yeah, maybe some people I can convince that the soul exists. So yeah, I think thank you so much.
So Ashutosh Kumar Thakur is also asking Durjoy's imagination of where current technology and societal attitude can lead this country is incredible. So he thinks that you have kind of imagined if we had this combination of politics and technology. Uh, that's where this is where we are going. Love that every character that comes up in the story with some significance and has a part to play in the bigger picture. So, any thoughts about that?
I think yeah. I mean that's what I started uh, this book with. I mean, when I homed in on the idea, I knew that there will be a lot of characters who will have to play certain roles in the book. The only fear was that will I overindulge myself and try to get more? And when you're writing about this stuff, um, you think you know best, and so I distinctly remember there were a couple of chapters after the book announces or the story announces that the soul exists, and it became like a white paper when I'm saying that okay, this is what will happen in the world. And I remember during the editing stages, Vaishali and
You can
forgot.
say it.
Yeah.
You were the
So
Saloni.
yeah, salary. So they said that you're making this too much about, like, this has become a white paper. Like, okay, this happens and now what are the repercussions? And this is
Yeah,
nothing to do with the story. And I need to tell you that I was really, really what do you say, attached to that portion, because I said, wow, only I'm thinking this. But when they said that, okay, you can do away with this stuff, I was hurt. But then I realized that, okay, then maybe this is too obvious.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean that yeah. So I tried to do that, and that is what I think also makes the book a little bit interesting. So yeah, but I tend to overindulge in the stuff that I like. So yeah, but thank you.
Okay. Durjoy has been writing for more than 10 years now. What are those two, three big changes he feels he has brought to his writing?
Three. I
That's
mean,
Akash Verma asking you.
three big changes. So one is a very obvious one, that I've stopped writing sex scenes. I mean, there is which I would say there is nothing wrong in writing sex scenes, but a lot of people started telling me that I use sex scenes as crutches, and that is how I sell my book. So once I stopped writing, I never got back to writing them. Now I feel very odd writing about them, which is not which, but I love reading them. When someone else writes it, I immediately get the sort of inspiration to write my own. But when I start writing it, it sort of feels like I'm using it as a crutch again. So
First City had this column at the back which used to talk about bad sex scenes. And it was mortifying to read them. Like, you if you imagine yourself being the writer and then they highlight that bit, it's like it was
no, I was
was
saying
horrible to even.
writing it is because a lot, like, since we can't write straight, we try to use metaphors, and then it just becomes really bad.
Yes,
So
I
yeah.
agree with you on that. The
uh,
metaphors are the worst.
oh, I mean, because you don't want to use the words for genitalia, you just try to, like, skip it and write it in some esoteric way, and it just becomes the worst. So now I
Yeah.
just sort of swore off it, and yeah. So one is that. The other is I don't know. I think everything else has been like a gradual.
Children have a way of appearing at the right time, huh?
Hi, and then don't make this into that BBC thing. Okay, say hi.
Hi.
No. That's exactly what you need to hear in a
Yeah.
literary sort of settings. Gibberish. Very good. Hi, Vishali, how are you? This
Hi,
is
how are
literally
you?
yeah. आंटी आपको वो देंगी पता
I
है
was wondering when you guys will appear.
this just got tired of me. So this is a new change that's happened ever since I've got this room, and it disappear. Uh, them and I, we all feel that I've gone somewhere.
Okay.
So need to see each other. So yeah.
Okay,
So
that was sweet actually. Sweet interlude to our serious conversation.
so yeah. That is one thing that has changed, but other things have been gradual. I know that my writing has little bit improved over the years, and yeah, so that's what has happened.
Okay, so Akash, who is our thriller writer, is asking you, and maybe he's angling for a compliment. He's saying, what are the genres Durjoy likes to read?
Whatever books you write, Akash, I like those. But yeah, I so there are certain phases. So there was a time that I really I only read thrillers, and right now I'm just reading a lot of love stories because I read one and I was like, this is pretty good, and it was a paranormal love story. It's a book series, A Discovery of Witches, which I really liked. And yeah, so it's about vampires and witches and etc. etc. But it's written really well, so I really like those. So right now I'm reading those. So but I read indiscriminately. So it's I mean, if anything gets a good review, I want to read it and then hate it for it getting a good review, and then I eventually see the point. So yeah.
For those who don't know, Durjoy regularly comes to the Penguin office, and we have to prepare a big package for him.
Yeah,
Of
that hasn't happened in like a really long time. So
yeah, yeah, I know. But hopefully, it'll happen very soon, Durjoy.
so
We'll
that.
get some good stuff to you.
Yeah.
Um, so there's Prachi Nayak asking, the book was sold like a love story, but it reads more like a thriller. There was something happening on every page, and I loved the concepts introduced, and I started to wonder if soulmates really exist. I mean, you can't say that it wasn't a love story and soulmates in the same the same sentence. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is a love story.
but I mean, Prachi is right in the sense that my now love stories are the central love story always comes as an afterthought. Everything around me for me is more interesting. I know a lot of people read A Touch of Eternity, and for them it's the love story. But for me, everything around it was more interesting. As far as everything happening on every page, I think that is how I have always aimed to write. That you should not bore the reader, and your story should move on every page. That is what I strive to do. Of course, I mean I do my best, but yeah, I think. Thank you, Prachi, for saying that, because I really try to write my books like that. That okay, no page should be waste. No line should be without impact. I mean,
Yeah,
you are not writing those lines for yourself. You are writing those lines to mean something for the reader.
yeah.
So yeah.
It's a page turner of a book. There is no doubt about it. Then Deba Mitra Mishra is asking, having worked with television earlier, are you coming up with something for digital platforms, precisely OTT? I mean, she wants to know if you're writing for OTT.
So, Never Kiss Your Best Friend came out last year on Z5. So, we might be working. So, I mean, we are writing the sequel for it. Let's see whether it comes out or not. So, that is in the works. A few of my books have been sold to OTT platforms as well, but we are still waiting for it to be converted into shows. So, yeah, that's what's happening. That's what's happening.
Okay, Durjoy, we have just about 2-3 minutes left. I would like to then pipe in and ask you what are the plans for the next book? I think a lot of people also ask you about the Boy Who Loved series. Like, is there going to be a sequel, third book to that?
That
So you can answer everything together.
Okay, so the Boy Who Loved series has become like a weight around my neck. That when is the third book coming? The only problem with writing the third book is that the first two books were so dark that I do not want to be in that space again and write the third book. And to be honest, I also wrote myself in a corner, and I don't know how to get out of it. So maybe it will come. I'm not promising anything, but even if it does, it's going to take some time. Uh, I have started the next book, but I'm not sure it's going to be the next book because I might reject it after a few months because till the time you have reached halfway through the book, you do not know whether it makes sense or not. So I started writing the next book, but I mean, I can't talk about it because I don't know whether it's going to be the next book. So yeah, but I would like to say that I'm reading a lot of paranormal love stories. So maybe it has something to do with that. Not sure what will happen in the next few months, but yeah, that's about it about my next book.
Yeah, so it's like a habit. You have to write. So you begin writing what comes to you, and then you find kind of fine tune that, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel very low. So I mean, when I'm writing the last draft of my book, so when I was writing the last draft of A Touch of Eternity, I was already thinking what my next book is going to be, because that becomes more interesting. Because once you are in the last stages, it becomes more of like a book management sort of a job, that how many, like how can you make this book more interesting, but it's not like really a creative process. So my next book starts to interest me a lot more, and then I can't wait to finish off the book and then just start cracking on the next book. So yeah, so that is, so I started it, but I don't know where that will go.
Yeah, I'm sure the readers see the hard work that happens, and a lot of new writers who are there. Durjoy, do you have something to say for them? Because I do want to highlight the fact that that's the amount of work that goes into making a book, the thought process, the planning, the writing, the reading, the evading the writing is also a job. So
Yeah.
you want to say something to the new writers?
Yeah, so a few things that I always tell young writers is that, firstly, be a little bit, so I mean, it seems very hypocritical coming from me, because I got published at 21, which is like a really young age to get published. But don't be in a hurry to get published, because you are really unpolished. You might not think so, but you are. Like, I at 35, I can't bear to read what I wrote at 21, and I think that I could have done a really better job at writing my first book. So be a little bit patient, read a lot instead, and keep working on your book. Uh, I mean, you can't really expect yourself to be one of the best writers when you're young. I mean, the only way that you will learn how to write is by reading other books and by seeing what other writers have done, and seeing how other writers have treated a story that is similar to yours. So do that exercise and read a lot of books, see how other people have written about the same things that you are trying to write about. Keep redoing your book, and if it gets rejected, don't be disheartened, but start working on your next book. I want to say that, editors like Vaishali, they're all waiting for the next big book. They have nothing against you. If you write a good book, they will do anything to get you published. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it works in everyone's favor if you write a good book. Let me tell you that as a writer, I want a big book that sells a million copies, because that would mean that we would have a lot of young readers who will be out looking for the next book to read, and then I can sell them my book. So let me tell you, everyone in the publishing industry is looking for that huge hit. So if you're getting rejected, don't take it personally, just try to write a better book. So, yeah.
That's absolutely correct. And that's the end of our show, Durjoy. Thanks for joining us from Dubai. And I'm sure the readers will immediately rush to buy the book. And the I think the link is being displayed here, but we would also like to promote the Amazon link is there. But you can go to your next bookstore also and buy it. And promote your bookstores that are close to your house, and patronize them so that we have cute little bookstores to read from. Of course, Amazon is there to, in case that's not a facility, then you can go to Amazon also and read it. Thank you, Kalinga, for having us on your platform, and thank you to all the readers for being with us. And have a great rest of the weekend. Good night.
Thank you, Vaishali, for doing this, and thank you, Kalinga, for having me
Thank
here.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.